just like to start with an acknowledgement of country. We acknowledge the elders, families and descendants of the Wurundjeri people on who have been and are the custodians of these lands. We acknowledge that the land in which we meet was the place of age-old ceremonies of celebration, initiation and renewal, and that the local Aboriginal peoples have had and continue to have a unique role in the life of these lands. Okay, so thank you everybody for coming out. It's a lovely day to see Jess off on her way to Canberra. For those of you who don't know what we're doing up here, Jessica Hackett has decided that she would like to take a petition of welcome all the way to Canberra, and she's going to walk it. She decided that it was time our government acknowledged that we are a generous people, that we are a welcoming people, and we want Australia and our government to reflect this. As it says in our national anthem, those who come by sea, there is boundless lands for us to share. And I think as we're coming into Australia Day, we need to remind a lot of people of that. I have been overwhelmed with the amazing support that we have gotten from the community. So what Jess is going to be doing on her way up to Canberra is she'll be staying with families and hosts from the areas that she passes through, Albury, Wangaratta, Wagga Wagga, all the way up. And people have come forward and opened their homes and their hearts to Jess and her campaign, welcoming her, showing just how true this petition is that she's taking. We want to send Jess off and we want to send her off well, but first of all, we've got a couple of people who'd like to just sort of talk about some of the issues. And to start with, I think we should hear from the lady herself before she gets too tired. Jessica Hackett.
Okay. Thank you all so much for coming. It's so wonderful to see you all. And thank you again to Sare Illuminado and Alnaz who provided the beautiful music that you just saw to support this cause. To start off, I'm just going to read from my journal that I started when I first thought of this project. The first date is 26th of Feb 2015. Dear Pinko, that's what I called this journal. I came up with an idea today. I heard on the radio that the government was taking yet another tough stance to keep asylum seekers out of Australia. And then there's some colourful language after that, which I won't repeat. I thought, this is so hopeless. I thought of writing a letter, then I thought, no, that's not going to do anything. They'll just ignore it. Even those rallies, I went to one a few months ago, and there were thousands of people that seemed to do nothing. The rallies doing nothing, not the people. I can imagine those leaders up there in Parliament, and they're just turning a deaf ear. It's like we're lint in their belly buttons. So I was pacing back and forth, thinking, what can I do? What can anyone do? And I gave up. It's hopeless. They won't listen. I flopped down onto the couch and picked up the remote. On Foxtel, there was, surprise, surprise, a doco about Nazi Germany. I sat there half watching, and I thought of a time when I was in a history class learning about this. I remember thinking, how could people let this happen? And then I remembered that quote, all it takes for evil to prevail is for good people to do nothing. I got up to get some chips from the kitchen and thought of some people living in that time. And they must have thought just like me. It's hopeless and no one's going to listen. Back on the couch, I turned the volume down so I could think while polishing off the bag of chips. The images of people being herded into train carriages and looking out from barbed wire fences flickered back at me. These people, like me, thinking that it's hopeless, they also had the added pressure that they were in a dictatorship and their lives were on the line if they spoke out. I don't really have that excuse. I just feel like I'm ignored. I thought, while I was licking the salt off my fingers, we are all ignored. I went to turn up the volume and change the channel, and I saw some soldiers fighting. There were groups who fought back in Nazi Germany. After all, look at the people who helped Anne Frank. They would have made a difference, and their lives were on the line. All it takes for evil to prevail is for good people to do nothing. I began pacing again. Well, no excuses, I can't do nothing. But it's not like I can march into Parliament and ask them to be human. Wait a moment, ... We're in a democracy. I can do that, and I will march. I'll march from here. Then they'll have to listen. I'll show them all the good people here in Australia. I rang my sister Michelle straight away. She was full of ideas and excitement and quotes, and I asked her, should I really do this? Is this what I should do? And she said, remember what Emma Watson said in her UN speech. If not me, who? If not now, when? So I put my runners on straight away and I walked 5 kilometres. So in my journal, I said that all those rallies and letters seemed to do nothing. But imagine if they never had happened. It all adds up. Every letter, every placard, and every signature. I'm here in front of all of you today because of all the many acts of kindness. And if I mentioned them all the acts that helped me get here today, we'd be here all day. I'm going to mention a couple though. When my friend Marie drove me to Warrigal to meet Russell Broadbent, because she thought that would give me some thinking time in the car and someone to vent to on the way back. My sister Beck, who used her writing skills to help me with all the emails I had to do. My school said, we're behind you, Jess. What do you need? Sister Brigid welcomed me under the banner of BASP, the Brigidine Asylum Seeker Project, and she's here today. She's going to talk to you in a moment. My partner Rob, who has said yes to every request and hasn't complained when I hardly spend time with him. My family, who have been so supportive. I've got so many more I want to say. Peter, who has helped me find my brain, who has just been amazing. A complete stranger who took 5 sheets of the petition and said to me, I'll get 100 signatures. And she sent back a letter with pages of signatures saying, well, I managed nearly 200, that's pretty good. So many people. Every day now, I'm getting emails and phone calls offering me a place to stay, company while I'm walking. People are inviting me to come along and see what they're doing, how they're helping settle refugees into rural communities, for example. I love the excitement in their voices. They are proud of the work they're doing, and they're gaining so much. There are so many more stories and so many more people that we can help. And all of you here are contributing to this story. And thank you for everyone coming today. When you think of writing a letter or doing a small act and you think it's not going to do anything, or you lose a bit of hope, just think, if not now, when? If not me, who? I'm going to let someone else talk now. Thank you very much, all of you.
Now, next up, we've got Murray. He's going to be reading out a statement from a recent detainee from the detention centre. We are not mentioning his name because he doesn't want his name to be mentioned, and Murray's going to read out his statement he wanted all of you to know.
I only wanted freedom for my family. Now that I am partly free, I have nightmares that this may be a mistake and that they will come and revoke the decision. I'm worried about doing the wrong thing and getting into trouble that will affect my wife and children. Thanks, Jess, for for walking this long way to tell the Parliament that we are good people. We will never forget the kind people in Australia who have kept telling us to hope and that things will be okay in the long run. Tell her to ask the government to trust us. We will be good citizens if they give us a chance.
Next up we have Simon Dalton from the Asylum Seekers Refuge Centre.
I met Jess only a few months ago. She had brought a group of her social justice students along to a day at Star of the Sea College on the subject of people seeking asylum. I was there because in my capacity as a training coordinator at the Dandenong Asylum Seeker Resource Centre, I had been asked to take along one of our members to speak to the group. Her name was Runak, a person seeking asylum from Iran, and she was the speaker that day. Now she's friends with Jess, and she's helped Jess to understand even more, to empathise even more about the reasons why people seek asylum to our country. As a result of that meeting, Jess asked to come along to the Dandenong Asylum Seeker Resource Centre to meet some more of our members and some of our staff as well. So that's how I got to know Jess. And when I found out what Jess was planning to do, I was totally inspired by her actions. From my understanding, most petitions start with a set of grievances and then demands. Not Jess. Her petition starts with this. She wants to draw to the attention of the House the generosity of the Australian people. And I reckon she was right to, because they seem to have forgotten in the House just how generous we are. And Jess will, on this journey, rely on the kindness of strangers for her to make her way from Melbourne to Canberra. And ever since she began her planning, she's been inviting people to become involved through Facebook and on her website, on her blog, going out to meet people. I believe that the term un-Australian needs to be re-hijacked, because I believe that the government has been using this term un-Australian to describe a lot of people that are very Australian. What Jess is highlighting is how Australians are welcoming, caring and give hope. Around each Australia Day, I have an imagined dialogue with my country, and I talk to my country, particularly in regard to reaching out to its and the world's most vulnerable people. And I feel that the government that represents our country is going backwards, and they are saturating the dialogue about how un-Australian we are in the blame game, about who's at fault for what. But we are Australian, we're not un-Australian, and through people like Jess and all who are supporting her in large and small ways on this journey, we intend to bring out the best in us, not the worst. I articulated some of this dialogue I had to my country, and it goes like this. I was telling my country how it starts at the grassroots. A person from among us has had enough of un-Australian behaviour. We are a land of Indigenous and migrants. This is our sum total. We have learned to get on and bring all we represent from other places to start something special here. That part of it has been only going for about 200 years, and it is in danger. There have been big problems from time to time in Australia, but we have come together as one and have done so better than most countries, seeking to find a way for many cultures to coexist in relative peace and prosperity. This is very Australian. Yet now we have stopped the welcome. We have become un-Australian to our very origins. In an attempt to jolt us into recognition of our better selves, Jessica Hackett, a secondary school drama teacher, is walking from Melbourne to Canberra to make us believe in ourselves again and relearn who we really are. We're welcomers and a people and place that gives hope to those without it. In this case, asylum seekers, people who our recent history tells us will turn out to be genuine refugees in more than 90% of cases. Now, one of our great Indigenous sons did a similar madcap thing in 2006 Michael Long was his name, and he helped start a new dialogue between us all by walking to Canberra on what has become known as the Long Walk. He was just asking for a fair go for Indigenous people, Indigenous Australians, us. That's what I'm backing Jess to do, and I reckon Australia will get behind her because that is who we are and that is our history. We have been welcomers. Jess is giving us a chance to once again practically show who we really are. And that's the sort of Australia that I love.
Next up, we're going to hear from writer Arnold Zable.
Thank you very much. Jessica, what you're doing is absolutely amazing. What you're doing is bearing witness. And you're bearing witness in summer. This is the time of the great Australian forgetfulness. Not only out of sight and out of mind, but also we go on enjoying the privileges of this great country and the long holidays we enjoy, and at the same time, at this very, very moment, there are men on Manus Island who are being driven mad. There are men on Manus Island that are swallowing shampoos and swallowing whatever they can, cutting themselves, hurting themselves, because they have no other option, no other way of showing how much in pain they are. And the most extraordinary thing is that they are innocent. They have not committed a crime. Let's bear this in mind. There are people to whom we have a duty of care who are now incarcerated in prison far over there in the Pacific, and they've done nothing wrong. All they've done is what my parents did, seek a new life in a new world far from the oppression they were fleeing from. I'm alive today because my mother was a queue jumper. I'm alive today because she read the signs early and got out of Poland early enough to save herself and then to bring over her husband. And for the rest of her days, she was a person who lived with a sense of guilt because she couldn't get the rest out. She didn't deserve to live with this guilt, but she felt it all the way through to her last dying days, that she did not rescue her mother, she did not rescue her father, she did not rescue her brothers and sisters and her uncles and her cousins and her community. And she was a good person, a decent person, and she hurt. And it's this hurt that is driving us, that these things are being committed in our name, and we feel helpless. But as Jessica said, every small action counts. Every little thing we do counts. And I want to mention two names, and I want you to take these names with you. These are two great witnesses that I've come to know in the last 10 years. One more recently, one back in 2002. The first is Amal Basri. Amal Basri was one of the survivors of the CivX disaster, one of the 45, out of which 7 came to live in Australia and 3 in Melbourne, and she was one of those 3. And Amal Basri was determined to bear witness. She had survived by clinging to a corpse for 20 hours. She said, I see them every night. Every night the boat is going down. Every night I see those little children floating like birds on the ocean. And she did everything she could to bear witness. She would get out of her sick bed when she had cancer and come to meetings a day after having chemotherapy to address, whether it was 10 people, whether it was the town hall packed with 2,500 people. She had to bear witness. Amal Basri is walking with you. And the second person I wanted to bring up is Behrouz Booshani. Behrouz Booshani is a Kurdish Iranian journalist who is now on Manus Island, where he's been for 2.5 years. Behrouz Booshani spends 16 hours a day, every day, writing, bearing witness to what is happening to his comrades on Manus Island, writing about dear gentle Reza Barati, the gentle giant they called him, with whom he became so close, who was killed by detention centre guards while in our care, writing about the slow grind of detention, the day after day after day of hopelessness, watching people going mad one by one, and yet he bears witness. He keeps going. He's writing, he's sending out petitions. If he can do it from Manus Island, then we can do it in our comfort here. Jessica, what you're doing is fantastic. It's very beautiful. And I want to end by saying that back in the medieval times, there used to be a special form of internment. People would be put in a dungeon, which they would call an oubliette. Now, oubliette comes from the word to forget. It was a place where they put people and they basically threw away the key. They were out of sight and out of mind. But we are not going to forget. We are going to keep reminding our political leaders. We're going to keep reminding the Australian public that at this moment people are suffering in our name. Innocents are suffering in our name. At this point in time, there are 30,000 asylum seekers living in limbo out here in the community. At this point in time, there are men, women and children on Nauru who are stuck on an island and have nowhere to go and are being harassed by the local population. At this moment in time, innocents are being punished. Jessica, our hearts go with you. We're going to walk with you metaphorically, and some of us are going to join you. Bless you for what you're doing, and let's keep at it. Thank you.
Before our last speaker, Sister Brigid, I'd just like to say that the handsome Robbie Lingham is going around with the petition. If you haven't signed it, please harass him and sign the petition. If afterwards you want to, we have the petition up here. That's what it's all about, people, getting up there, signing, putting your name down. Okay, now to the grand finale, Sister Brigid.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here for Jess. It's a great tribute to her that we've come to start her on this first stage of her journey. It just occurred to me this morning, not a terribly profound thought, I think, but that welcome begins with we. And we is about community. We want a community that is able to say yes to people who are coming here simply for protection. And we don't want to continue the harsh and cruel treatment that's being meted out in our name. And it's a great privilege, and it's a great thing that we're able to be here today to say both farewell and good luck to Jess on this first stage of her journey. Strangers are only strangers while we let them be. This morning I was getting a cup of takeaway coffee and the queue was a bit long, and I started talking to the man in front of me, and he was telling me all about his holiday in the bush. And all of a sudden we went from being strangers to two people who had something in common. We'd both been on holiday and we were both rejoicing about that fact. It doesn't take too much to change them into we, but it's got to be deliberate and we've got to do things differently. I was just talking before to someone about the number of things that need to be changed in terms of our policies with regard to asylum seekers and refugees now, and you can get overwhelmed by the number of things. But then I thought, no, we really just want to change the basic premises. If we can change the basic premises that we're coming from, everything else would fall into place. And I think this welcome and Welcome Petition sort of reminds us of that. If we can change the fact that we're regarding so many people as them and they, and what they are going to do to us, what they are going to be in terms of a threat, and we can change them all into we, then we have a community that is enriched and so much better in terms of what we're looking for. I think today we kind of have two flip sides of the coin. We've got a young woman with courage, with, as she said before, if I don't do it, who will? So I'm going to go and do something. So we've got a young woman, and it's just great to see her taking this action. And on the other side, we have a fairly intractable bureaucracy that seems incapable of simply changing the way that we're treating people, so that we have a bureaucracy that's either cruel by intent, and that's a terrible thing to think, or it's a bureaucracy that simply has got into a mode of doing things that they haven't got enough imagination to get out of. But whatever, that bureaucracy is the opposite to being decent and being fair and being compassionate. As Arnold said, we've got a lot of people who are suffering. I mean, by world numbers, there's not a lot. But by individual lives, there are a lot. And those lives are in our hands until we make enough noise to make our government understand that the majority of people just simply won't tolerate for much longer what they're doing. I think Welcome, the whole idea of Welcome, is very significant. It's the opposite to telling people to go away and fend for themselves. It's about hope. When you welcome somebody, you give them hope. And it's a terrible thing to take hope away from somebody or some group of people, and it's a wonderful thing to give hope back to them. You know, I met a woman yesterday in the detention centre, and she was telling me that she has in place an agreement with the people who run the centre that she speak to her son, who's on Nauru, every week on Friday. On Friday at noon, she is supposed to speak to her son, who is very ill. The two of them separated. And every week, for the last 3 weeks in a row, that phone call has been cancelled. That's what I mean by a bureaucracy that's either cruel by intent or it's cruel and these terrible things happen. That she cannot speak to a very ill son who's incarcerated on Nauru when she's locked up here in Melbourne, it just beggars belief. So we've got to make certain that we give the authorities enough of a challenge and a push that they do not render they do not make these hopeless situations continue. And I think that, Jess, you are doing that by saying we want no more of this unnecessary pain. And so a Welcome Petition from a woman who's showing us how to proceed. I asked the question, how many more Jesses will there be before we've got a government who changes its mind? BASP, Brigid Asylum Seekers Project, is delighted to auspice this. We will be with you, Jess, every bit of the way. I wish you well as we farewell you, and we pray that God will speed you on your way.
He's robbed. Please give him a cuddle.